The commander of Iran's army boasts that Iran's missile and UAV forces are ready and prepared for another clash with Israel. Meanwhile, Hamas signals that it is not interested in a diplomatic solution to the conflict with Israel, and so the IDF will push for a decisive victory, prompting a question about the fateful days that we're heading for in the Gaza campaign. Even as the IDF makes great progress in the southern part of the Gaza Strip, destroying dozens of tunnels and above-ground terror infrastructure, Hamas believes that it can withstand all of this and still win some kind of public relations victory over Israel, so they continue to refuse to compromise. In the northern arena, there was a dramatic action in the last 24 hours as the IDF discovered a large cache of Iranian weapons in Syria and moved to confiscate it, as well as discovering the smuggling ring which was responsible for these weapons. Next door in Lebanon, we might be seeing the end of the Hezbollah area as the president of the internationally recognized government says that he's ready to do battle to disarm the terrorist organization. Israel, in coordination with the United States, is pushing for a military decision in the Gaza Strip while simultaneously bringing humanitarian aid into areas outside of Hamas's control. In the fighting, soldiers of Brigade 179 have completed the combat in the southern Gaza Strip and will bring you all the information about their activity. After the shocking hostage videos were released and in view of Hamas's strong position in the international arena, the question arises why the group chose to publish the footage right now. Giving us a hint is a senior Hamas official who announced that the initiative to recognize the Palestinian state is the result of the October 7th attacks, and we will continue, according to Hamas. However, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz reacted harshly to the hostage videos and declared Hamas cannot be part of Gaza's future. And meanwhile, IDF forces raided 4 zones simultaneously in the Hadar area of southern Syria, locating many weapons that belong to the Iranian terror cell, even as Iranian military commanders continue to threaten Israel with fresh missile and UAV attacks. We have a lot to talk about today, so let's dive into the details. I'm Yair Pinto, and this is your Boots on the Ground report about what's happening in Israel on day 668 of the war against Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis in Yemen, the Shia militias in Iraq, and all the other armed groups in this region that are operating under the control of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps, which is the head of the axis of evil in the Middle East. And a moment before we start, I'd like to call on you to help us spread the truth. We are facing a tsunami of lies against Israel. Guys, together, let's support the truth and share what's happening in Israel. Guys, share this content, hit the like, leave a comment, and hit that subscribe button so that you never miss another episode of Boots on the Ground and know what's happening and how to pray. We'll begin today with a dramatic report coming from the northern arena, where over the last 24 hours, troops of Brigade 226 under Division 210 and together with field interrogators of Unit 504 completed an operation to question on site several suspects involved in weapons trafficking in the Hadar area of southern Syria. According to the IDF spokesperson's statement, the operation began after prior intelligence surveillance and in-depth field interrogation took place. As part of the mission, the forces raided 4 locations simultaneously deep inside enemy territory in Syria and located many weapons that the suspects were trading. The IDF says that Division 210 forces are deployed in the sector in order to act and prevent the entrenchment of terrorist elements in Syria with the goal of protecting the citizens of the State of Israel. Let's recall that last week an Israeli security source told the Saudi channel El Haddad that Israel has concrete warnings of planned attacks by groups operating in southern Syria under Iranian direction. According to him, those groups are supported by Iran and are preparing infrastructure for offensive action against Israel from Syria. The source stressed that Israel is working directly with the Syrian regime in an attempt to prevent an escalation, but the source also clarified that we will not agree to harm or attack the Druze, in a direct reference to the sensitive status of the community in southern Syria, especially in the El Sawadia area. And speaking more generally, the Israeli security establishment is closely monitoring developments in southern Syria out of the assessment that the balance of power in the area could change rapidly, whether as a result of strengthening the Iranian axis or because of a collapse of local control. Israel continues to make clear that it has no intention of an offensive action in that area, but will act with full force if attacks are carried out from Syrian territory towards the Israeli border or if the situation becomes suddenly destabilized. Now, we'll move to the fighting in the Gaza Strip, but before we continue reporting, it is important that you keep spreading the truth, share, and follow us. And most importantly, do not forget to hit that subscribe button so that you remain tuned to what's happening in Israel. Another thing that you can do to help Israel in this time of crisis is to be in touch with our TBN partners. And I want to talk briefly about one of those partners, Magen David Adom. Israelis don't know what's coming next. Maybe Iran will attack us tomorrow, as they're threatening to do. Maybe rockets will come from somewhere else. Maybe terrorist attacks will start up again with bus bombings in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, like during the first and second Palestinian intifadas. Again, we don't know what's coming, but there's one thing that we do know. We know who will be here with us, no matter what happens. Magen David Adom is already preparing for the future. While the headlines shift, Magen David Adom is restocking ambulances, upgrading trauma gear, running drills, training volunteers, and in general, getting ready for the next emergency before it even happens. Because in Israel, we don't have the luxury of waiting to see what will happen next. When the sirens go off, there's no time to wonder. There's only time to act. And that's what Magen David Adom does, day after day, war or no war. But staying ready for emergencies isn't automatic. It takes support from people like you. So guys, if you want to help save lives in Israel, go to savelifeisrael.com. Again, that's savelifeisrael.com and help Magen David Adom stay prepared, stay strong, and stay first on the scene. Because saving lives isn't just about showing up, it's about being ready, always. And now, we're getting back into the news and shifting our focus to the Gaza Strip. During the past 2 months, reservists from the 179th Brigade Combat Team under the Gaza Division have been operating in the southern Gaza Strip as part of a broad effort to foil the terror infrastructure of the terrorist organizations in the area. During the fighting, the forces destroyed hundreds of terror infrastructures above and below ground, including military buildings used for firing, observation, and operational activity against the IDF forces. The brigade's engineering forces operated underground in cooperation with the Air Force and destroyed, among other things, booby-trap buildings, sniper and firing positions, and tunnel shafts. In the course of the activity, the forces also destroyed an underground route about 300 meters long. In addition, dozens of tunnel shafts, rockets, and launchers and other weapons that are used by the terrorist organizations were located. The IDF notes that the security forces continue to operate deep inside the Gaza Strip, combining ground and air forces in order to disrupt the terror activity and protect the security of the citizens of the State of Israel. Guys, here at TBN Israel, we will continue to bring you the whole truth about what's happening, boots on the ground style. And we call on you to hit that subscribe button, to leave a comment, to leave a like, and never to miss another episode of Boots on the Ground. And now, let's keep our focus on the Gaza Strip, but shift slightly to the issue of the false narrative that Hamas has been putting out about famine and starvation conditions in the Gaza Strip, and that somehow it's all Israel's fault. Large segments of the international media have picked up on this false narrative and run with it, And as a result, Israel is experiencing diplomatic tsunami, with several Western countries threatening to recognize a Palestinian state, and many calls are being made to sanction the Jewish state. Israel has responded by increasing the entry of aid into the Gaza Strip and tried to help the United Nations distribute it more safely, but we don't seem to be getting much credit for taking these steps. Meanwhile, Hamas and the Islamic Jihad have in recent days decided to release a blitz of shocking videos showing captives held in harsh conditions in tunnels in the Gaza Strip. It is difficult to understand why they would do such a thing, since it only led to many governments that had been very harshly criticizing Israel in recent days, switching track and beginning to criticize Hamas and the Palestinian Islamic Jihad terrorist groups in Gaza as well. So, as far as we can see, several objectives that the terrorist organization is pushing here. First and foremost, this is a tactic of psychological warfare against the Israeli public, and by extension, also the Israeli government. By pushing the videos, Hamas simply tries to shock the public and sow fear. The clips allow the group to position itself ostensibly as controlling the situation and holding a position of strength vis-à-vis Israel. For their cultural and ideological point of view, Israelis are weak for valuing the lives of their citizens, their safety and their freedom of the individuals, whereas they see themselves as strong for being willing to endure great hardships and sacrifice the lives of as many of their own people as necessary to achieve their goals. On that note, the terrorists are trying to bring Israel back to the negotiating table. Hamas understands that public pressure may force the government to resume hostage deal negotiations under terms more favorable to the organization, Hamas, chief amongst them a demand for a comprehensive deal with guarantees to end this war and for an Israeli withdrawal from the Gaza Strip, as well as conditioning disarmament on the establishment of a Palestinian state, a stance completely at odds with Israel's current position in the talks. Thus, the videos became a brutal bargaining chip in the negotiations. Once again, this serves another purpose that terrorists are pursuing in this situation, preventing a total collapse of the contacts. Alongside the psychological terror, Hamas signals that it does not want the negotiations to end. The use of the videos is intended to keep the diplomatic channel open, but on terms that suit Hamas. Finally, Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad wants to try and exploit Israel's political situation. The timing of the release of these videos is therefore no coincidence, because the terrorists see that Israel is having an internal political crisis and a sharp disagreement amongst the governing coalition over the plan to boost humanitarian aid into Gaza. Hamas has identified a moment of weakness and is landing a blow when public opinion is inflamed. And amidst all of this, Israel is also under pressure from some of its closest allies in the Western countries, who are threatening to recognize a Palestinian state at the United Nations General Assembly in the meeting in September. Ghazi Hamad, a senior member of Hamas's political bureau that lives in Qatar, hastened to take credit on behalf of Hamas for the initiative to recognize a Palestinian state in an interview with Al Jazeera on Saturday night, in which he claimed that this development is one of the fruits of the October 7th attack. He added that the weapons of the resistance are the essence of the Palestinian issue. We are committed to them and will not hand over even one empty cartridge. For those who may have forgotten, this is the same Hamad who days after the October 7th massacre told the media that Israel is a state we want to eliminate, and promised Al-Aqsa flood is only the first time. There will be a second, a third flood. We have the resilience and the ability to fight and pay the price. This is according to the Hamas leader. It is hard to understand why the long arm of Israel's security services has not yet reached this evil man, but many of his colleagues have already been sorted out, and his day might be coming very soon. In the meantime, Hamas draws encouragement from the successes of this false narrative about a famine, starvation in Gaza, and from the reactions it stirred in the world and also here in Israel. They are also delighted by the linkage that is made between the initiative to recognize a Palestinian state and the war in the Gaza Strip. The timing of the launch, as well as the connection that some Western leaders created between it and the situation in Gaza, turned this initiative in the public eye into a diplomatic achievement for Hamas. If we add this, the easing of the military pressure and the channels opened to flood the Gaza Strip with food and civilian supplies, we can understand the complacency displayed by the terrorist organization. To sum up, here are some important points to remember about this situation. First, the hostages are the main bargaining chip in the hands of the Hamas terrorists and the Islamic Jihad groups after almost 22 months of fighting in which they have lost most of their trained fighting force, leadership, military infrastructure, weapons and manufacturing facilities, and smuggling tunnels. They are therefore trying to use the leverage of the hostages, give them the maximum extent possible in the situation. Their primary goal at this point is to bring Israel back to the negotiating table and prevent the talks from collapsing while trying to obtain a deal that serves the terrorist organization. The timing of these moves has also been calculated to the maximum advantage of an internal Israeli political crisis caused by many factors, including dispute over plans to increase aid to the Gaza Strip. And last but not least, Hamas is also trying to take advantage of developments in international diplomacy, presenting the pressure on Israel as an achievement of the October 7th massacre and claiming that this attack directly led to the increased chances for Western governments recognizing a Palestinian state. Once again, amidst all of this, last Thursday, the Palestinian Islamic Jihad terrorist organization released a video of the captive Rom Berslavsky. His family allowed several images from it to be published, and then, a day later, Hamas released footage of Eviatar David, which caused his family to say that he looked like a walking skeleton. On Sunday, Hamas published another clip of him from the same tunnel in which he also speaks, telling the camera about how little food he's getting, amongst other things. In the video, the two Israeli hostages appear thin and in very poor healthy conditions. They are looking terrible. As a reminder, Rom Berslavsky was a security guard at the Nova Music Festival and was abducted on October 7, and Eviatar came to enjoy the party and was kidnapped together with his friend Guy Gilboa Dalal, who is also held by Hamas. As part of Israel's response to the release of these videos, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu spoke with the head of the Red Cross delegation in the region, Julian Larison, and asked for his involvement in providing food to our captives and immediate medical treatment for them. The Prime Minister's office said that Netanyahu told Larison that Hamas's lie of starvation reverberates around the world while the systematic starvation is directed at our captives, the Israeli hostages who suffer brutal physical and mental abuse. The world cannot stand idle by in the face of the shocking images reminiscent of Nazi crimes. The Red Cross issued a statement saying that the hostages must receive humane treatment and adequate conditions, drawing a response from the spokesperson of Hamas's military wing, Abu Obeida, who said that if the Red Cross, Israel, or anyone else wants the hostages to be treated humanely, Israel must stop all airstrikes and open humanitarian corridors to the Gaza Strip. He also claimed that Hamas is not deliberately starving captives, but that it is a result of the hunger and the siege in Gaza. Clearly, Hamas sees playing games with the lives of these hostages as just another item in their toolkit for trying to exploit Israel and the international community. What do you think about this situation? I'm very curious to hear your comments, so let me know. In any case, on Monday morning, 3 aid convoys from Ashdod port were transferred to the Gaza Strip. One convoy reached the Zikim crossing, the second, Kerem Shalom, and the third the center of the Gaza Strip. Each convoy had about 20 trucks loaded with pallets of flour sacks. In total, hundreds of tons of flour were brought into the Gaza Strip in the last 24 hours. The IDF says that every day in recent days, more than 200 large semi-trailer trucks with humanitarian aid enter Gaza. Tonight, another 128 trucks entered from Jordan and are expected to enter from Israel to the Gaza Strip. The IDF says that the current policy is a massive entry of humanitarian aid into the Gaza Strip, while simultaneously bringing supplies directly to distribution stations in the south of Gaza that provide assistance straight to the residents. The IDF states that alongside the large volume of aid entering the Gaza Strip, the United Nations and international organizations are struggling to distribute it throughout the Gaza Strip. Currently, at the Kerem Shalom and the Zikim crossings, goods amounting to about 500 trucks have accumulated without being distributed in the Gaza Strip. A military source said there is indeed an improvement in collecting aid from the crossings by the United Nations, but it is still not at a sufficient pace. Additionally, the IDF updated that 136 bundles of humanitarian aid were airdropped into the Gaza Strip by 6 different countries in recent days, including the UAE, Jordan, Egypt, Germany, and for the first time, Belgium. And speaking of European countries, French President Emmanuel Macron commented on Sunday on the footage released of Israeli hostages being held in harsh conditions in the Gaza Strip, posting on X. He said, "Appalling cruelty, boundless inhumanity, that is what Hamas embodies. We continue to work tirelessly to achieve their unconditional release, to restore the ceasefire without delay, and to allow the massive delivery of humanitarian aid that is still blocked at Gaza's gates." He added, "The absolute priority for France is the immediate release of all the hostages. We must have the total demilitarization of Hamas, its complete exclusion from any form of governments in the Gaza Strip, and the recognition of Israel by the state of Palestine." The last part is a reference to the Macron plan to formally recognize a Palestinian state at the United Nations General Assembly in a meeting next month. It's important to mention that the EU, Britain, Germany, and other Western governments also issue harsh statements condemning Hamas for these videos, which many call on Hamas to disarm. It is possible that this is part of an effort to walk back the threats to recognize a Palestinian state, or at least set conditions for that recognition that might give these Western governments an excuse not to make a firm commitment. Only time will tell. In any case, David Lammy, the British Foreign Secretary who recently set conditions for Israel and threatened that Britain would recognize a Palestinian state, wrote on X, "The images of hostages displayed for propaganda purposes are sickening. Every hostage must be released unconditionally. Hamas must be disarmed and have no control over Gaza. We are working with partners on a long-term solution and a plan for peace. This must begin with an immediate ceasefire that re-release the hostages and with the removal of inhumane aid restrictions." And German Chancellor Friedrich Merz said, "I am appalled by the images of Eviatar David and Rom Barslavsky. Hamas tortures hostages, terrorizes Israel, and uses Gaza's population as human shields. The images show that Hamas must not play a role in Gaza's future." Kaja Kallas, Estonia's foreign minister and candidate for EU foreign policy chief, also tweeted, "The images of the Israeli hostages are shocking and expose Hamas's barbarity. All hostages must be released immediately and unconditionally. Hamas must be disarmed and end its rule in Gaza. At the same time, large-scale humanitarian aid must be allowed to reach those in need." And Ukrainian Foreign Minister Andriy Sybiha wrote, "Hamas's inhumane treatment of Israeli hostages deserves the strongest condemnation. Gaza's residents must not continue to suffer because of Hamas's horrific crimes. Hamas must lay down its arms and release all hostages immediately. And meanwhile, international humanitarian aid must be delivered to Gaza's civilians as quickly and fully as possible. A complete ceasefire must remain a top priority. It is nice to see that not everyone has been taken in by the false narratives and the media campaigns that Hamas is trying so hard to spin. There are still some voices ready to stand up for the truth, and we know that includes you guys. So, as always, we invite you to share these videos, leave a comment, leave the like button, and also hit that subscribe button so that you never miss another episode of Boots on the Ground. Now, we are switching our focus to Iran, where the Supreme Commander of the Army, General Amir Khatami, gave a speech recently to a group of senior military officers in which he made the bold statement that his forces are ready for another round of hostilities. And according to him, despite the destruction of about half of Iran's missile launchers and significant damage to its missile and UAV arsenal, Iran's army is still prepared and ready for confrontation with Israel. To his credit, he also warned against complacency in the face of an enemy that could strike at any moment and praised the army's capabilities, which he said were proven during the 12-day confrontation that ended with an Iranian surrender and a ceasefire. To make a brief comment on all of this, there are reports out of Iran of a severe water shortage, baking hot temperatures that are making life utterly miserable in the cities, an ongoing and deepening economic crisis, shortages of electricity and power, and crumbling infrastructure, labor unrest, food shortages, and many other problems. If there's anybody who's watching this video who has the ability to advise the Iranian regime, please ask them to seriously consider the possibility that the time has come to take a break from threatening to attack Israel and instead work on addressing some of these issues. Israel is not going anywhere. We'll still be here in a few years, and for that matter, we'll still be here in a few decades. If you get all of this stuff sorted out and then still want to pick up the war against us again, we are here. But we want peace with you guys as well, with the people of Iran. And now, we're switching our focus to the Lebanese front, where sources told the El Arabiya El Hadat news portal this week that the presidential palace in Lebanon informed Hezbollah that it has no choice but to cooperate with the state. The sources added that Lebanon today received the final copy of the ideas of the United States envoy Tom Barak, and they clarified that Hezbollah is stunned by the demands of its allies that it disarms. The sources noted that President Joseph Aoun's speech last Thursday stated that Hezbollah's disarmament is on the government's agenda, created popular, political, and governmental movements supporting Lebanon's government. Elsewhere, the Ashrak al-Awsat portal reported that Lebanon's government is testing its cohesion at a session to be held on Tuesday to approve exclusive weapons for the state and to begin implementing steps to achieve it. This is the subject of 11th-hour talks amongst President Aoun's speaker Nabih Berri and Prime Minister Nawaf Salam in an effort to reach a formula that the government can adopt together and then to meet the international and the Arab pressure demanding that weapons be limited to the state. According to the paper, Hezbollah hesitates to set a timetable for disarmament as long as Israel continues its violations and attacks, refuses to comply with a ceasefire, and prevents reconstruction. In other words, Hezbollah knows its time is up, but it's trying to grasp at any excuse that it has to avoid the inevitable. We'll see how long they can manage to keep this up. In any case, here at TBN Israel, we'll continue to bring you the whole truth about what's happening in Israel and about the forces shaping the Middle East. So guys, keep standing with what is going on, know, and most importantly, pray. Guys, when you pray for the situation in Israel, make sure you pray for the IDF soldiers that are risking their lives for 22 months against multiple enemies. Pray for the hostages that are being kept in tunnels in Gaza, that are not being fed, that are being tortured also since October 7 of 2023. Let's pray for all the innocent lives, also in Gaza, also in Syria, also in Lebanon, also in Yemen. All these civilians are being harmed by these terrorist organizations. Let's pray that God will comfort them, and that instead of hating Israel, all these terrorists will start loving the Jewish people. And guys, don't forget to pray for the peace of Jerusalem, and together we will win this war.
Hello, this is Mati here in Jerusalem with TBN Israel.
This is Yair Pinto from TBN Israel here in Jerusalem. TBN Israel is keeping viewers informed with Israel-focused news, culture, and what God is doing in this land.
Support TBN Israel today online at tbn.org/Israel. Thank you.